So I've had a Canadian on set. I've had an Israeli on set, certainly Americans. I'm trying to think. I think a Brit I've had on set, but I've never had a Scotsman.
There you go.
Welcome.
Well, you're in for a treat today then.
I mean, the accent sounds a little like maybe Boston. I wasn't sure.
I will say South Dakota.
South Dakota. Euan, it's great to have you on. I really appreciate you coming in. People are going to learn a lot from your journey, your story.
Well, I think whatever I can do to add value, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. And I'm hoping I can provide some insights and, as I said, value to anybody that's going to listen to this. And that's always what I try and do on a daily basis, is like make an impact and add value. So thank you.
And you are one resilient dude, because I was at a Broncos game last night and it was raining and nobody was there. 30 guys RSVP'd and there was one guy who showed up, and then it got better and people started showing up. But there was one guy there in the downpour, and that was you. And I really appreciate that. That says a lot. And, for the record, you only came for a few minutes just to say hi. And, you took a car and a train or whatever. It's like Uber.
Planes, trains, automobiles.
to get there. So, and like it could be seen as a small thing, but to me, those little things are what matter. And I saw some character come out in you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it was the way I was raised, really, by my parents. And like I saw from a very early age, a really strong work ethic. My mom was an elementary school teacher and my dad worked for the local tourism authority. And they showed up every single day. And I just took that for granted in terms of that was the way I raised, but I realized that was something really important to always show up. And I look back on being a kid and seeing my parents the way they did. They showed up every day, and my mom never missed a day of school. She was there every single day for her. She taught 5-year-olds, she taught kindergarten. So it was just something that was instilled in me. And I just appreciate any opportunity that I get, and an invite to just come and tailgate with you for a little bit. It didn't look like the weather was cooperating, but I was like, I've been invited. It's the way I was raised, and I need to at least, show face and say hi. And I think that is important to me, but it also means something to anybody that's given the opportunity or invited you. So I think that's something that I try to instill in my kids as well. So
I love it. There's a saying, I forget what it goes, like something like, how you do some things is how you do everything, or something like that. But it's the little things that can be extrapolated to big things. So I think of, that. And then I think of, back in my former life, I was a rabbi, and people would, obviously people would die and I would be involved. And a guy would call me and say, I don't know what to do for my friend John, whose mother just died. And I would say, show up, just show up. It's so hard to just show up in the difficult situations. And that's where some guys disappear and you lose friends. And it's a true test of character. And so I think, again, how you do the little things is oftentimes how you do the big things.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like those little things compound over time. So it's just creating the discipline behind it as well, because I think that people find that very difficult. They can do something for a short space of time. It's like, every January 1st rolls around and everybody goes to the gym for the first 30 days and then they give up. But I think I had that instilled in me, as I said, from being raised by the parents that I had. But also the other big factor for me was coming to the United States and seeing A, the opportunities, but B, understanding the discipline behind, as you said, doing the small things on a daily basis, what actually then compounds over time, and the much larger opportunities that creates. And that, I think culturally it's very, very different to where I grew up, to where I obviously plant my flag now. And I think if you, and we can get into this in more detail, but I hear it all the time when you ask an immigrant that's come from another country about the opportunities in America. They're always their eyes grow wide, and they're just very much of the fact that we didn't grow up with this. Like, we didn't grow up with these opportunities. America still has a platform for success, and I think that's why a lot of my friends come from other countries and have started businesses and have been very successful and employed people because of the difference in availability of success when it comes to being in the States. So, I think that's a lot to do with my story and my journey.
There's so much in there. One is, being an immigrant brings a whole set of challenges. I immigrated to Israel. We just moved back here before COVID. So I know firsthand the challenges that an immigrant faces, just some little things that you just don't know how to navigate. But I would say certainly the opportunities in immigrating to a new country, especially to a first world, thriving country like the US and Israel, brings tremendous opportunities and a way of seeing the world that the natives they can't appreciate.
Yeah.
I see it on college campuses, like all the crap that was going on with the pro Hamas stuff, and the people who are leading it tend to be sort of white suburban kids, saying how horrible America is and chanting death to America. And it's like, wow, if they only knew, what the opportunities they have in hand, and they don't see the world necessarily like you do.
Well, I think for me, obviously, I have a different perspective. But when I hear anybody from the US complain, I'm like, have you heard of Willy Wonka? And they're like, the chocolate factory? I'm like, yeah, the golden ticket, when they won the golden ticket, that's what you got. When you were born in this country, you won the golden ticket. And what I mean by that is, it's like, if I'm a big believer in what you focus on expands, right? That saying of what you focus on expands. So if you come across people that are miserable and negative, that's what they're focusing on. And, is the United States perfect? Absolutely not. But in terms of, is there anywhere that's perfect? No. But what I did when I came here, really, I moved back to the United States full-time in 2008. So 17 years ago, the US economy was crashing, the world economy was crashing. I didn't realize the impact of that. I was just felt lucky to be here. And I think the thing is, it's like, we can wake up every day and we could turn on the news, which, God bless you if you want to do that. I'm not going to turn on the news because it's filled with negativity. So if you focus on all the negative things, whether it's in politics or whatever you're doing, that's going to expand. And I decide, no, yeah, there are some negative things going on, but I'm going to focus on all the really good things that I have every day. And that's just what I use as a foundation, to create some success and motive and always moving forward and always, being very appreciative of the opportunities that America provides. And I say all the time to people, I'm like, well, would you ever move back to Scotland? And my response is always no. And they're like, but why? And I said, because look, at the end of the day, my life is here. My kids are American, but Scotland just doesn't, it's a developed country. It is a first world country, but it just doesn't provide the same ability to be successful and the same opportunities. And the other thing I will say that I hear all the time from my peers, especially that come from the UK, success in the UK, and especially how I grew up, is not celebrated. It's like, it was always the guy that had his own business in my hometown that drove the nice car. Everybody was like, look at that guy. He thinks he's better than he is. Rather than celebrating something that somebody started their own business, and instead of championing that, we were always wanting to bring them down. And that's not the case in America. And it's like, that's always hard for me when I go back. I'm always like, they don't celebrate success. And I think
Interesting.
that's a cultural thing, but I think that is something that is missing and is not interwoven in the fabric of that culture where I'm from, but it's very different here,
So such a good point. I mean, I just love being around immigrants because there's a fresh viewpoint, and the assumptions are gone, and just the gratitude and appreciation that's it's so refreshing. Again, having lived in two different countries, in some ways I do feel like I immigrated back to America, and I was just so appreciative of the opportunity to make opportunities, right? They
Yeah.
have so much here. I was just listening to a politician who said the one thing that America still, the biggest export that we have is this American dream, right? That you can become anything you want if you work hard enough. And you're celebrated and you're supported in that. And we've created such a victim culture. I'm a logotherapist. I teach the work of Viktor Frankl.
Yep.
And he said the only thing we have is the power to choose our response to any given set of circumstances. So you could never be a victim.
Yep.
Right? He wasn't a victim in the Holocaust because he
Yep.
said they imprisoned his body. They couldn't imprison his
Yep.
spirit. And people need to hear this message.
Yeah. No, I firmly agree on that. And I think it's like, especially like with my two kids, they're 15 and 13, and there can be a sense of that victim mentality. It's like, you made me do this, or this made me do this. I'm like, no, you have to understand that you're in control of your response to any situation. I didn't make you respond like this by saying this thing. You chose to respond that way. And I think the way society has shifted, especially of recent, it is more like poor me, victim mentality, where I always say to my kids, there's two people. There are players and there are victims. And you've got the choice. You can choose to be a victim or you can choose to be a player. And what I mean by that is, players don't see the poor me. They see the opportunity. They see the ability to make an impact and the success that can breed from that. So it's like, I firmly believe it's like you get out of life what you put into it, and it's what kind of mindset you have on a daily basis. So I think I've learned so much from my time in America and being around a lot of very interesting, successful people, and really delving into the mindset of things and how that can make a huge impact in just the quality of your life and the quality of the people that you decide to spend time with. I think that's hugely important.
Yeah, I mean, you embody the foundation, the origin story of this country, right? And I think that's partially why it's such a successful country, is because it was founded by immigrants. Also, as an aside, Israel has more immigrants per capita than anywhere else in the world. And that's why they're called the startup nation, because they have more startups per capita there than anywhere outside of America.
Yep.
And because the immigrant has to solve problems,
Yep.
right? An immigrant sees from a fresh perspective. And so this country was founded on people like you who came here and solving problems. Another teacher of mine, Edith Eger, she was a Holocaust survivor. She said, victims say, why me? Survivors say, what now?
Yep.
Right? And that's what you're describing. The player says, what now?
Yeah.
What do I have in my power to impact?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the thing is, it was, a journey to get here. And my ex-wife, she's American, and she was from Colorado. And when we first got married, we lived in Scotland for a couple years. And the reason we were in Scotland for a couple years was it took me 2 years to get my green card. And, I think there was a lesson in that as well, because there's a couple people tired of me saying this thing, but good things come to those who wait, and they know who they are if they're listening. But I think that was a lesson, and it took 2 years. And I was always like, wait a minute, I'm coming from the United Kingdom. Why is it taking so long to get my green card? You know, we're supposed to be this strong ally base, but it was the journey of good things come to those who wait. I had to take 2 years to get here, but it was that journey of now I got the opportunity to be in the US, and it just didn't happen because I think if it was that instant gratification and I'd been able to get my green card in a couple of weeks, it maybe would have tainted the whole responsibility of going through that process and the real life lessons that it taught me, of how to struggle through something and really just not give up, essentially, to get here and then, you know, start my life and my journey in the United States. And you know, as a wee boy, did I ever think that I would be living in Denver, Colorado and have 2 children that were born in Colorado? No, but I always had, if you ask my parents, I always had this aspiration for something much bigger. And growing up in a small town in Scotland, that was not the mindset. But I think my parents would say, yeah, Euan was going to do something different. We didn't know what it was going to be, but he was not going to follow the same path as most people did, from where I grew up. And, you know, my journey has led me to here, and all the amazing experiences I've had along with that.
Well, it's not lost on me that journey to get here is filled with trials and tribulations and probably some tragedies, right? Because that's the immigrant journey, is you're leaving behind the comfort. It says in the Bible, the Torah, God comes to Abraham and says, go forth to the, you know, unknown, right? And that's what it is. You're going into the unknown, and there are struggles in there that are partially why you're the man that you are, because that resistance, it's like lifting weights, right? You get strong. Well, if you don't succumb, if you don't quit, if you don't turn back, but here you are. So I know it's been a journey with more than a few trials and challenges. You and I were talking last night about, you know, your mom's health and your family's still back there. And I know that lonely feeling of, you know, they're so far away. And maybe hear a little bit about that, what it's like to have your family so far away from you.
Yeah, I think that definitely keeps me grounded in terms of my responsibility with my family. You know, just to give you some background and context, my mom has MS, and she when I was born, she had a horrific birth with me and had to be rushed to the emergency hospital. And basically after that was told, you can't have any more children. She survived, obviously, but she was diagnosed with MS not too long thereafter. And so my mom is the most resilient person I've ever met. Like, she's had such a journey with her MS. And when I was moving back to the United States full time in 2008, my mom and dad got a divorce, and basically, you know, I was kind of left to look after my mom and make sure she was, because she had retired, and you know, she needed round the clock care, and still does, obviously, to this day. So that was, you know, a journey in itself, now having the responsibility of my mom and her not able to, you know, see her son because she couldn't travel out here. So it was, the responsibility was always to go back to the UK and Scotland and see my family. And that's what I had to do. But in terms of, you know, the way I was raised and the way my mom raised me and what she provided for me as a child, there was never ever a thought process of I'm not going to do what it takes, A, to look after my mom, and B, to be there for her. So I think that was tough with that whole process. And then when we had our kids, my mom loves kids because she taught kindergarten for 30 plus years. So they're here, and she doesn't, we FaceTime on a weekly basis, but I take my kids back to Scotland as much as I can, and we try and get back at least once a year so that they can see their granny sass. But it was, it still is, it's still an ongoing journey in that sense of things, and trying to be financially responsible for things in Scotland, and helping out always, and making sure, I'm always keeping in touch with my family. But, my mom has never, ever made me feel guilty about living in the US, and, about leaving my roots and my family. She's always said, if you're happy, I am happy. And I'm like, I don't know how that quite works, but you're putting all that pressure on me, Mom. Thank you for that. Like, geez. But, she knows that my home is here now, and, I'm a citizen, and when I get the chance to go back, I'm actually just going back in a couple of weeks, so to see them. So, look, Baruch, the thing is, I always, like, there's been things in my life where people have said, oh, that's difficult. And I'm like, this is nothing to compare to what some people have to deal with on a daily basis. And I just look at I look at any situation. I'm like, how can I navigate it? How can we make the best possible situation of this and the best possible outcome? But it's like, it goes back to the whole victim mentality. Like, I think in a lot of senses, if people really, really focused hard on the struggles that they have in life, or the things that are put in front of them that are difficult, I say all the time, I could just lay in bed and every day and not get out of bed and focus on that, and I would fall in a deep depression. But that's not what I do, because I always know that, I'm blessed, I'm lucky, I have all this opportunity. And why would I decide to focus on the negative when I have so many great things, and I have so many great friends and great people to share that with, and build up. Like, I love quotes, and it's like, one of my favorite is, it's on my whiteboard in my office. It's like, the rising tide lifts all boats. And again, I drum these things into my kids, because I'm like, you have got the chance to be that, that rising tide. And again, I think it goes back to the championing of success here, as opposed to the negative connotation in some circumstances from where I grew up.
Well, we live in this world now more than ever before where we seek comfort, right? Comfort is the sort of the holy grail in many ways. And that's not, somebody once said, comfort zone. There's a quote about the comfort zone. Nothing grows there, or something like that.
Yeah.
But the point can't be to be comfortable, because, as a philosophy professor of mine said, ain't none of us getting out of this alive. Like, nothing about this fucking journey is comfortable. You live on a rock in outer space waiting to die.
Yeah.
And you don't focus on that. You focus on what you're going to do with your limited time here. How are you going to make it worthy? Viktor Frankl talks about in Man's Search for Meaning, quoting Dostoevsky. He says, I'm butchering it, but he says, make me, the Lord, the one thing I ask is to make me worthy of my burdens, right? Can I carry this and keep moving forward? And that's what I hear you talking about. We all got burdens. Do you just crumble under the weight of them, or do you pick it up and you hike up the mountain?
Yeah. And I think, when people meet me and ask me about how I got here, and like what I've done, and what, because I've been in the real estate space for close to 16 years now. So that's the majority of my, my career here in the States. But, when I moved here in 2008, we didn't have any money. Like it wasn't like we had a pile of cash that we could just live on. And we initially moved back to San Diego because that's where I met me and my ex-wife, and we had a foundation there. But it was 2008. I had been in the pharmaceutical space in Scotland. Nobody was hiring anybody within that space. The medical industry was laying people off. We were living on a blow-up mattress in a friend's house with an absolute piece of crap Honda Accord that had stains on the seats and everything. And we made the decision. We couldn't get over the hump in San Diego, so it was like, let's go back to Colorado where my ex-wife's family are from. So at least we have some kind of stability or sense of belonging. And I got a job selling Yellow Page ads. That was my first job, and in the United States. And looking back on it now, people are like, "What the heck?" Like Yellow Pages. I said, "Yeah, I was convincing people that Yellow Pages was going to be around for the next 20 years, and they needed to be in that space, and they needed to have the other layers of advertising that we provided." And did you
believe that?
Well, here's how I approach that. And this has always been how I approach anything. I can't lead somebody up the garden path and look them in the eye. I'm an old school guy. I need to be able to look you in the eye and shake your hand. And like, if your eyes go off to the one way, to the side or whatever, and you can't look me in the eye, I have an issue with that. Like, so I couldn't sit down with you as a business owner and put a program together for you so that I was just going to make a commission and it wasn't going to work for you. So what I did was I wear my heart on my sleeve. So anybody that meets me understands that he is going to go to work for us. And what I did was I developed success because I did develop programs for these small business owners that did get them a return on their investment. And they saw that I cared about them. And I was in that space for about 18 months, and I did become really successful in terms of I got a lot of business. And we used to have to go in on a Friday afternoon and cold call like businesses to set up appointments for the next week. And I would go in and I'd go in my cubicle and we would open the Yellow Pages and cold call businesses. And I would sit there for about 30 minutes and maybe make a call. And then I would get up and it'd be like 3 p.m. I'd be like, "See ya." And they'd be like, "Where are you going?" I said, I'm going to happy hour. I've worked all week. And they're like, "But you've got to sit here and make calls." And I said, "No, I don't, because my calendar is full next week. It's full of appointments." And they're like, "How did you get that?" And I said, "Do you know what? I've realized that if you take care of somebody and you do a good job for them, they're more than likely going to tell their friend or their buddy that owns another business." And that's how I grew my business, by referral. So then when I made the decision to jump into real estate in 2010, again, when the economy was still going down and the real estate was just on a nosedive, looking back on it, was that the best time to get my real estate license? No. But I'm glad I got in at the hardest time because it taught me so many lessons. But I understood how to do business by referral. So I just applied that to real estate. Take care of people. And I think that's a life lesson. If you take care of people, people in turn will take care of you. And, I go back to, why was I selling Yellow Pages? But it taught me how to do business by referral. And I over, the 16 years of being in real estate and selling real estate, my business is basically 99% repeat and referral business, because I always want to, it's the under promising, over delivering, and being, wearing that heart on your sleeve. So where anybody that you come into to contact with, that you can provide value, they never ever think to me when they work with me that he's just doing this to make a commission. It's always about he's doing this to make our lives better. And that's the way I approach everything. It's like, I don't want to just meet you and have a base level conversation. I want to ask questions that we can go deeper on and learn more about each other, because I always say, if I can learn something from you, maybe I can help you. And that, like, at the end of the day, when I'm sitting down with somebody that's trying to sell their house, it's not just about the sale of their house. There's a lot of other things going on in their lives. Like, what's their financial situation? Do they have kids? And it's like I've always taken this approach about learning as much from them, because I believe as a connector, a natural connector, maybe I can, get a great result for them on the sale of their house, but make a bigger impact in their lives. And that's how I've always approached things.
Love it. I heard two words over and over and over, whether you said the words resilience and relationships, right? That's what I heard, sort of a common thread. I call it a soul thread, sort of woven probably there when you were 5, 25 now, right? And it's a common theme, I imagine, through your life are those two things. And I love that you're expressing it in you're not talking about real estate. You happen to be doing it through real estate. But this podcast is called 13 Minutes Why Every Man Needs a Why, right? And the why, I work with guys to help them find their why. And they'll say, well, I'm in a job that I don't love. It's not my why. I say, bullshit. It's not the job. That's just how you express your why, your purpose. In your case, resilience, relationships.
Yep.
So I love that you're really focused in on this why without actually naming it and expressing it, whether you're selling yellow pages, whether you're, in real estate, whether you're here or in Scotland or whatever. It's a common thread. And I trust men who have that consistency, that thread through their life.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to the basic fundamentals of what the opportunity is. And like, I'd be missing a huge opportunity if I, looked at life as a transaction, and I think, unfortunately, a lot of people look at their life as a transaction, and it's like, they're willing to give something for something in return. Mm. And I think, I read the book, The Go-Giver, the first year I got into real estate, and, I have a strong faith in God, and obviously, the Bible as the Bible, but I would call the Go-Giver my kind of business Bible, because it taught me the basic principles of give, always give, and don't expect anything in return. Because if you're giving something and expecting anything in return, you're doing it for the wrong reasons, I believe. And I have so many life examples over my time, not just in America, but growing up in Scotland, where you realize that you're giving something, and for some reason something comes into your life with from a completely different aspect or a different angle. And I always tell people, because over the years I've been fortunate enough to mentor a lot of people within real estate, and give my perspective on things. But it's always the question of, how do I get business? Like, what do I do? And I said, there's no magic wand. There's no silver bullet. It's about having the right mindset and wanting to give to people. And then you will see a response in return. And I just think that's lost, especially in this instant gratification.
Especially in your line of work too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I think real estate has been an incredible vehicle for my life and the journey that I've had, and the opportunities I've been able to provide for my family, not just in Scotland, helping them out there, but also my kids have had an incredible journey. And it's about trying to keep them grounded, and always, realizing that, it just doesn't happen. You've got to earn it. But I think the big thing is, it's about, what are you giving? What kind of is your value add? What are you doing to solve somebody's problem? And if you can approach life with that, the opportunities will be endless. And I've been fortunate enough to have that experience myself, and seen plenty of my peers and my friends, create that success around that mentality. So
I love it. I have a good friend who's been on the podcast, Scott, and he's in the mortgage side of the real estate business. And he decided a long time ago he doesn't do mortgages. He helps people build wealth. It's their number one asset. And he's in the relationship wealth building business. And that translates to how people feel when they're with him, that it's not about getting them a mortgage. In your case, it's not about selling a house, right? Getting them into a house. It's about a home. It's about a life. It's about all these things. And it's refreshing to hear, because I've gone through some real estate transactions, and that's exactly what they were, transactions. And you feel like a transaction, and you don't feel seen, and you don't feel heard. And I think it says a lot that you've gone into an industry that I would say maybe is not known for what you're describing. Maybe it's more so now than ever before, but it's refreshing to hear.
And I think like the life is a lot about perspective. Like I have just within, my industry and what I've been part of for the last 15, 16 years, I have a tremendous amount of perspective, because I didn't start in real estate selling high-end homes or $1 million homes. My journey, my first 2 years in real estate, I was selling $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 condos. And do you know what? I didn't know any. The greatest thing was I didn't know any different. I didn't have anything. I didn't have the barometer to match it from where I'd been in the industry 10 years previous, where things were great and it was like, and then suddenly it fell off the cliff. I came in with that, and I was making a few $100 on a commission, but I thought that was amazing. And, I can remember running around, like, my kind of area that I grew up in real estate was like North Aurora, and selling all those condos. And, I had one oversized suit. I had the Honda Accord that was a piece of crap, but I didn't think that, I didn't look the part or fit the part, because I had the mentality. I knew that I was always going out to provide value for everybody that I worked with, and create success for them, because their success was my success. And it was like, I die now with, especially where in real estate, where the average home prices are, and these kids that get into the business and they go and buy or lease the Mercedes or the BMW, and they think this instant gratification life is what it's all about. And I'm like, are you effing joking me? Like, where you've got to earn it. And I can remember there was a kid that worked for me, and he got into the industry, and he was 26, and he was a hard worker. But I'd mentored him to get his real estate license, and he came from like the credit repair side of things. And he turned up at the coffee shop for a meeting that we had, and he had this big Cheshire grin smile on his face. And he's like, I got a new car. And I'm like, okay. And he wanted to show me it. And he bought this brand new, he didn't buy it, he leased it. Leased this brand new white BMW. And the kid was not in good financial shape. He had a lot of debt. And he was so proud. I said, get the F out of here, get in that car, drive it back to where you got it from, and hand it back in. And his face just dropped. And I said, that is a poor decision, because you're basing your success on driving a BMW. That is not what is going to make you successful.
And then you got to back into it.
And he shit himself. He was like, are we not going to have our meeting? I said, no, I've not got time for this. And that was always like, I can be tough and harsh, but my girlfriend right now, Myra, like, I can be harsh with her, but because I just want to help her. And anybody that I say something, direct, because I'm a pretty direct person, it's to help. It's never to like, make them feel uncomfortable. But I think the thing is, if people aren't honest with you, you're never going to grow, or you're never going to, and like, I think the thing is, I've always said how I feel, but it's never to bring somebody down. It's always to like make them think or provide a solution. But that's one thing I do have to work on, is maybe sometimes my delivery with things. But we're all work in progress, and I've got so much improvement to do as a human and as a man and as a dad and as a friend. But I'll never shy away from saying something that I know that could potentially help somebody, but might be difficult to say.
So important to learn how to say hard things and hear hard things.
Yeah.
I see that in the men's groups and the men's coaching I do. We're not raised to necessarily do either, right? We act tough, and then you see this in men's peer groups where guys will just keep burying little slights that they're unhappy about, and you can feel it build up over time. And so, we have this principle in there called clearing. You have to go around the group and say, I'm clear with you. I'm not clear with you. And here's why. And I think it's particularly an American challenge. I don't know about Scotland, but in Israel, people have no problem saying hard things.
Yeah.
Right? You get into it, you even yell, and nobody seems to notice they're yelling, because, I'm not saying it's the greatest way to live, but they have no problem saying hard things. I think Americans are pretty soft in that way.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think and that's part of, I think when people meet me, they understand that it's genuine. It's not, I'm saying something for what somebody wants to hear, because I think that's such a travesty. If you're just pumping people up with what they want to hear, you're doing them a disservice. And, I think I always try to be completely transparent and give my unvarnished opinion, because at the end of the day, like if we just go through life and through society with telling people what they want to hear, there's such a missing element to what enriches life. And like I don't mind having, I don't like, and that's part of maybe why I've had success in the real estate space, because when you're selling somebody's house, you can tell them what they want to hear. You can tell them the price that they want to list the home for, but you're doing that complete disservice. You're not providing any value at all. Then what the hell is the point in me even, selling your home? You have to have these tough conversations, and you have to tell them things that they may not want to hear, but you've got to be able to provide why and always back that up. And it goes back to like the most important thing in my life is my 2 kids, and I realize the opportunity I have with them, and to instill in them these kind of principles of what we've been talking about, and being transparent and being real, and always having those discussions. So I think it's super important.
I love it. It's just so clear, focused, passionate, principled. It's really inspiring to sit and be in this conversation with you. Before we wrap up, I know you are also so much more than a realtor, right? You're exploring now the podcasting space. Maybe you're venturing out into telling a different story from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Where are you at on that journey?
Well, I think that, I'm passionate about what the space I'm in real estate, but is that really, my calling? And I'm like, my real passion is being an immigrant in this country, and having the opportunity to live this life. And what I want to do is, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to interview other immigrants that have come to the States and had success, and really distill why people come from other countries and suddenly and make a success of it here, whether it be the hard work or the mindset, but really interview these immigrants, these successful immigrants, and as I said, distill that and provide a platform for anyone that wants to learn and also maybe be entrepreneurial and start their business. And it's like you won the lottery because you were born here, but you're complaining. No, here's a kind of blueprint for success, and it's not just immigrants that can take this and from the interviews. It's everybody in society. So that's where I want to take my journey onto the next stage and really hone in on that immigrant story, the immigrant experience, but provide a blueprint platform for people that want success.
Well, I'm ready for the podcast. I'll be your first subscriber. So let's get going on that.
Thank you.
Truly inspiring. You're literally one of the finest Americans I know. So thank you for immigrating to this country and lifting us up because, what's the saying? Rising tides.
Rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes.
Yeah. So, there you go.
So really, it's an inspiration and an honor and privilege to know you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Love it. To be continued.
Thank you.
All right.